I've been receiving more and more calls from lawyers all across the country asking me for advice on how to sell their practice. And so, despite the fact that I've written the book about it, Selling Your Law Practice, The Profitable Exit Strategy, which is available at my website, www.lawbiz.com, I thought I'd add a few comments here in our program about selling your law practice. Here are some tips for you to consider. First, every law practice, that's my opinion, every law practice has value, and every law practice can be sold for a price. I won't say how much you need and what price you're going to get for that, but every law practice has value. The next tip is plan for retirement. Don't wake up one morning and say, aha, tomorrow I want to retire, or worse yet, today I want to retire. It seems to me that you really, in this particular adventure, must have a plan, more so than in any other part of your practice, more so than any other part of your career. And the reason I say that is because if you thought there would be a problem in ascertaining the value of your practice, think of the buyers. They may not realize that there are law practices available for sale. So there is an education and a communication gap that has to be bridged. That does not happen overnight. And the more you plan for this, the further out ahead you are of the curve, the more likely you are not only to sell your practice, but to sell your practice for the top dollar. I can tell you horror stories where people have come up to me and said, I want to leave the practice in 30 days, sell my practice. Well, that's like a fire sale. You know, that's just not going to happen. You're not going to get the value that you deserve. Or alternatively, they may say to me that I want the maximum dollar, and I ask them what's the level of the revenue in today's practice, and they say, well, I'm really not taking on any more cases, so our revenue is coming down. Well, nobody wants to buy a depreciating asset, and that's really not the right terminology, but an asset, your law practice, where the revenue curve is on the downswing rather than the upswing. So you've got to think about this before you move forward, and before it's really too close to the time that you want to extract yourself from the practice of law. The other tip that I want to suggest to you is that it takes some time. Think about this. It takes some time for you to develop the appropriate marketing material to let your public know that you are now, your practice that is now available for sale. Next, it takes some time to negotiate the transaction. Next, it takes some time to develop the legal documents, the contract of sale, and an escrow, and so forth. You may be as much as 3 months or 4 months or 5 months down the road before you actually get a signed contract, and that's pretty fast. Next, realize that most rules of professional conduct across the country, and there are now over 42 states that permit the sale of the practice of law, require notice to clients. That notice usually is 90 days. So that's 3 months added, even if you were to sell it, that is, even if you were to get a contract of sale today, you have a minimum of 3 months because of the notice provision. So if you're going to sell your practice, it quite easily could take you 6 to 9 months on the fast track. Keep that in mind, and that's one reason why I say it's really important for you to plan ahead. Another tip connected with this is that if you are willing, if you are able to work with the buyer of your law practice in a transition from you as the primary lawyer to the buyer as the primary lawyer, you not only can get some additional income, either in the form of a higher sale price or in the form of a consulting arrangement for which you will be paid, but you will also assure the buyer that most of your clients will stay with the new operation. And when you can give that kind of assurance to a buyer, the buyer is more willing to pay more money for the practice than he or she might otherwise be willing to pay. And lastly, I want to address those of you in our audience who might be prospective buyers. Today is a good time to buy a law practice. Law practices have gone through some horrendous economic challenges in the last year or 2 years. And today you can buy a law practice at the bottom end of the valuation scale. And you can develop that practice at a time when the scale and the value of the practice and the revenue in the law practice will be on the upswing. So don't forget, if you're a young man or young woman, or if you want to add a new practice area to your existing practice, or if you want to beef up your practice in order for you to sell your practice in a year or 5 years from now, today is a good time to buy a practice. Thanks for joining us.